Yesterday we looked at action and how to purify action, how to act with a worshipful attitude, and what is the payoff. The result is you achieve success, the likes of which you never imagined. You gain happiness in the performance of the action, independent of what the result is from the world. And most importantly, you develop spiritually. Today, let's take a look at emotions. What is the role of emotions in our life? We enter into relationships, and in the beginning, everything is fine. And then problems start. Then the cracks start showing. So what happens is we expect the best and we're totally unprepared for the worst. So how do we go about our relationships in such a way that there are no frictions, no problems, is the question. And the Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta addresses this situation brilliantly. It deals with love, bhakti. What is love? The love that we profess to have is nothing but self-love. We love ourselves, and if anybody happens to cater to us, we say we love them, not for their own sake, but because they are catering to us. So it boils down to self-love. How many people in the world have genuine concern for another human being? Irrespective of the return that they get is the question. So what Krishna tells us is, if our love has a hidden agenda, has a selfish axe to grind, it ceases to be love, it is attachment. So let's take a look at the difference between love and attachment. Attachment is a love that is based on convenience. If it is convenient for me to have you around, then I say I love you. But when it stops being convenient, then the object of attachment is dropped instantly. Somebody sent me a mail this morning saying, oh, clarity comes in a flash. It's not that clarity comes in a flash. It is selfishness comes in a flash. The moment you understand that the person is no longer convenient to have around, you simply drop the person irrespective of obligation, irrespective of what you have received from the person, irrespective of what is your duty towards the other person. And this is rampant in the world today. Whereas pure love is not based on convenience. It is unconditional commitment to the other person, irrespective of what the other person does or does not do. Attachment is dependent on a return. And the moment the return dries up, the love also dries up. And then come the legal suits and the police complaints and all the rest of it. Love is independent of a return. Wherever you are attached, it destroys the relationship, it destroys you. Whereas when it is genuine love, you develop, irrespective of what happens to the other person. The other person may reject it, the other person may accept it, but you will develop. That's for certain. Where there is attachment, there is sorrow. There is sorrow and there is loss. An exceptional example of this attachment is Dasharatha in the Ramayana. What an outstanding personality, what a genuine personality. And yet his downfall was attachment to Rama. Attachment to Rama finished him off. Kaikeyi was only nimitta in the destruction, was only instrumental in the destruction. With Kaikeyi, he just made an error of judgment. Well, that is also a lesson to be learned. The lesson to be learned is that you cannot take the other person's goodness for granted. Yes, in a particular situation, Kaikeyi helped him. But he gave her an unconditional boon, and that was his downfall. Because he did not take into account inherent selfishness that there is in every individual. And when the situation changes, that same boon, the same person who is extremely sacrificial, Kaikeyi was very, very sacrificial, turned against him. So anyway, but the example that we are speaking of is Dasharatha and Rama. His attachment to Rama was such that when an asura came and threatened to do harm to Rama, he was prepared to sign off anything. He was willing to, he succumbed to the blackmail. Not based on fact, based on attachment. When Rama came to know of this, he merely sent that asura a message that you don't get out of this place in 20 seconds, you're dead. And he ran for his life. So what is the difference between the two? When you're attached, you become weak, you become powerless. When you have love, you become a pillar of strength. This is the difference. So when you're attached, you're sorrowful, you lose. When you have genuine love, you gain, and it is joyful. Attachment limits you, limits your relationship, limits everything. Whereas love is universal. See, attachment, because it is dependent on a selfish return, it is necessarily restricted, limited to certain individuals. But when it is pure love, if you say A loves B truly, then that love is universal because it has no selfish axe to grind. Automatically you love everyone. How do you develop this love? Let's face it, we don't have love. You know, there's a poem which says, and love is still an emptier sound, the modern fair one's jest, on earth unknown, or only found to warm the turtle's nest, which means true love is not known in the world. What you see is just attachment. Now, if you want to develop this love within you, if you want to develop genuineness, how do you do that? The first thing that you have to do is develop gratitude. Why is it that we don't have gratitude? We don't have gratitude because our focus is on what we don't have. And we are so obsessed with what we don't have that we completely miss the thousands and millions of things that we have been blessed with. The abundance that we have been blessed with, we don't see. And because we don't see that, we don't see any reason to be grateful. You look at anybody. A child complains of what the parents have not done for the child. The parents complain of what the children have not done for them. The employer complains of the employee complains of the employer. Each one is looking at what is not being done for him or her. How many of us are looking at what we have? So the moment your attention shifts from what you don't have to what you have, you are filled with gratitude. And this gratitude itself is love. And the highest form of gratitude that you can have is gratitude towards that higher being, that divine source that has blessed you with millions and millions of things, most of which you're completely unaware of. But without the blessings, without what has been endowed to you, you can't exist even for a second. So this gratitude is very important. And the gratitude is developed when you shift your attention from what you don't have, this negative mindset, deficiency mindset, to abundancy mindset. And what a wonderful thing it is. Once you are aware of the abundance that you have been bestowed with by that divine force. For instance, how many of us are forget grateful, are even aware of the fact that we have been gifted with the power of eyesight. Simple thing like eyesight, we take for granted. It's only when you come across a person who suddenly loses the sight that you realize, oh my God, it can be taken away. There are people who are born blind. There are people who are born without the ability to hear or speak. So on and so forth. A simple thing like the capacity to see, if you're grateful for it, then you don't see the little things that you don't have. And then you realize that what you don't have, you really don't need. What has been taken away from you, it has been taken away because you don't need it, because it's not in your interest to have. And when you understand that, then you become truly grateful. What a wonderful divine power that is, that understands beforehand what you want, what you don't want, what you need, what you don't need, and gives you exactly what you need. Not a bit more, not a bit less. Bit more would be terrible. Bit less, of course, would be. Gratitude. The second thing is that all of us, particularly the modern generation, with every passing generation, the emphasis, the focus is on demanding rights versus fulfilling obligations, duties. The Indian tradition, the Indian culture is based on the performance of duties and not claim any rights. The famous verse in the second chapter of the Gita says, Karmanyeva adhikaraste. Your duty is in performance of action, not to the fruit thereof, not to the result. And any individual, any society that functions on duties will be happy, will be successful, will prosper. And still we don't see it. Why do we claim rights? Why do we demand things from people? You see, the simple psychology is the moment you demand it, whether it is explicitly said or assumed, what is the psychology of the other person, even if otherwise the person would want to give it to you, now says no, digs his heels in and says, I will not give. The less you demand from society, the more society feels like giving to you. Nature feels like giving to you. So, rights versus duties. And the third is the crux of the whole thing. We operate out of a sense of separateness. Whenever we look at people, we see, what do we see? We see people as different from us, separate from us. And the more that you are established in this separateness, the more insecure you feel, the more you feel threatened by people, the more vulnerable you feel. And as a result of that, you adopt the policy, offense is the best defense. So before anything can happen, you get aggressive. This aggression is worldwide. Aggression is not merely in picking up a gun and killing, that also happens, but in the sharp words that we use, which come across even through an email. This morning I got an email from someone, sharp cutting words. It's worse than a sword. Why? Why does a person have to use such sharp words? Because there's so much hatred, and this hatred comes because of separateness. You know, in a tribal area, there lived a couple, an elderly couple. And this old man, every week he used to go from his village, which didn't have very much, to the nearest town to do his weekly shopping, provisions, vegetables, this, that, and the other. One day when he went shopping there, they had the weekly bazaar. You know, villages have the weekly bazaar. He went there and the shopkeeper called him and said, I'm giving you a gift. He says, what is it? And he gave him a mirror, a little mirror. He didn't understand what it was. He said, what is this? He said, hold it before you. He held it before himself. He'd never seen a reflection of himself before. He says, "This is you." And he looked at it and he was so thrilled, so excited, because for the first time in his life, he was seeing himself in the mirror. So he put that mirror in his pocket, went back home, and for some reason did not tell his wife about this mirror. But the concept of looking at yourself in the mirror was so thrilling that every now and then he'd take the mirror out, look at him, admire himself in the mirror, and put back the mirror. The wife said, "This is something strange going on with this man." But she didn't ask him anything. When he was fast asleep, like all wives, she was very curious to find out what her husband is up to. When he was fast asleep, she went quietly, picked the mirror up, and looked at it. When she looked at it, she got the shock of her life. What did she see there? The picture of another woman. She had never seen herself. So when she looked in the mirror, she saw another woman there. And she screamed and hollered and brought the roof down and fought with him and said, "What do you mean by carrying on with another woman?" He said, "What? What are you waking me up in the middle of the night for?" And making strange allegations. And then she showed the mirror. He said, "You stupid woman, this is your own reflection." This is what happens to us. When we look at other people, because we don't have the capacity of seeing them as nothing but reflections of ourselves, it creates a lot of agitation, a lot of imaginary grief, jealousy, envy, and all the rest of it. And this is the root cause of all our problems. If only we had the capacity to share in other people's joys. If only we have the capacity to share in Sri Lanka winning a match as much as we enjoy India winning a match. This happens. This happens when a person is dedicated to cricket, a true cricket lover. To him, it doesn't matter which team wins, because he gets joy in just seeing the excellence in the game of cricket. Same thing with tennis, same thing with anything. Why should you not share in your neighbor's son getting 97%? Why